Hey guys, tonight we're going to journey back in time, not to the familiar pyramids of Egypt or the grand temples of Rome, but to a place much closer to home for many of us, a place shrouded in mystery and forgotten by most history books. Imagine standing in a vast, sprawling city, bustling with tens of thousands of people, its skyline dominated by colossal earthen mounds, some larger at their base than the Great Pyramid of Giza. You hear the sounds of distant drums, the chatter of a vibrant market, and the murmur of a truly massive population. This isn't some ancient European capital. This is Cahokia, a lost city, arguably the greatest metropolis in North America for centuries, a place almost entirely overlooked in our collective memory. You see, for roughly 600 years, from about 600 to 1400 AD, a sophisticated society flourished in what is now southern Illinois, just across the Mississippi River from modern-day St. Louis, at its peak, around 1050 to 1200 AD. Cahokia was larger than London was at the same time, with a population that could have reached 20,000 Bodkins, even 40,000 people. It was a thriving urban center, built by people we now call the Mound Builders, specifically the Mississippian culture. But unlike the Maya or Aztecs, who built in stone, these people built in earth, and their monumental achievements have often been dismissed or ignored. And honestly, if you tried to build a city this big with just dirt and baskets today, you probably wouldn't survive past the first month. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It genuinely helps the channel, and it tells me you appreciate these little forays into the forgotten corners of history. And if you're feeling up to it, drop a comment with your location and the local time. It's always fascinating to see where everyone is drifting off to. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture yourself gazing up at the sheer scale of Monk's Mound, the largest of Cahokia's earthworks, a pyramid of dirt rising 10 stories high. It's a testament to incredible labor, organization, and a vision that stretched generations. Who were these people? How did they build such a place, and why did it eventually disappear? The sheer silence of the modern site now, compared to the imagined bustle, is a fascinating contrast, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. So, you're standing in the imagined heart of Cahokia, gazing up at its impressive mounds, wondering how such a monumental undertaking was even possible. The first clue lies in its strategic location, the Mississippi River Valley. You see, Cahokia wasn't just built anywhere. It was perfectly situated in what archaeologists call the American Bottom, a vast floodplain that offered an abundance of resources and a prime geographic position for trade and communication. Imagine this fertile land, stretching for miles, fed by the mighty Mississippi River and its tributaries, the Missouri and the Illinois rivers. This confluence of major waterways was a literal highway system for ancient peoples, allowing easy travel and the transport of goods over vast distances. It's like having three major interstates converging right at your doorstep. Only instead of cars, you've got canoes. This incredible access to water routes is a mainstream historical fact that underpinned Cahokia's rise as a central hub. But it wasn't just about transportation. The American Bottom was an incredibly rich and diverse ecosystem. You had the river itself, teeming with fish, mussels, and waterfowl. The fertile floodplain was ideal for agriculture, particularly the cultivation of maize, or corn, which became the dietary cornerstone of the Mississippian culture. Imagine vast fields of corn stretching towards the horizon, providing sustenance for tens of thousands of people. Beyond the floodplains, you had woodlands providing timber for construction and fuel, and abundant game for hunting. This rich resource base meant that the people of Cahokia could support a large, dense population, something that was quite rare in pre-Columbian North America. A quirky or fringe tidbit about the American Bottom is that the very soil composition in the area, a blend of riverine silt and loose, wind-blown glacial dust, made it particularly suitable for mound building. The soil had just the right consistency, easy to dig, but stable enough to hold its shape when compacted. It's almost as if the land itself was inviting these colossal earthworks. Historians still argue whether the agricultural abundance of maize alone was enough to fuel Cahokia's massive population growth, or if other, less perishable crops and wild resources played an equally vital role in its sustained development. The strategic placement of Cahokia in this rich riverine environment wasn't just a matter of convenience, it was a deliberate choice that allowed for intense agricultural production, facilitated extensive trade networks, and provided a defensible position. It was the perfect storm of geographical advantages that enabled a small settlement to blossom into a sprawling, complex city. You can almost feel the rich, dark earth beneath your feet, vibrating with the energy of a thriving ancient civilization. A powerful foundation that gently lulls you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. With Cahokia strategically positioned in the fertile American bottom, drawing sustenance from the land and trade from the rivers. The stage was set for its defining feature, the monumental earthworks. Chief among them, Monk's Mound. Imagine standing at its base, craning your neck to take in its sheer scale, a towering testament to human will and collective labor, built entirely by hand. You see, Monk's Mound isn't just a big pile of dirt, it's the largest prehistoric earthen construction in the Americas, and one of the largest in the world, at its base. It's wider than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It rises in 4 broad terraces to a height of approximately 100 feet, about 30 meters, equivalent to a 10-story building. Its base covers roughly 14 acres, 5.7 hectares, an area larger than that of the Great Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico, which is another massive ancient pyramid. This immense scale is a mainstream historical fact that often astounds people when they learn about Cahokia. The construction of Monk's Mound was an undertaking of staggering proportions. It's estimated that over 22 million cubic feet, $623,000 cubic meters of earth were moved to build it. Think about that for a moment. No heavy machinery, no beasts of burden, just people, digging with stone or shell hose, loading dirt into wicker baskets, carrying those baskets on their backs, and emptying them, layer by painstaking layer. This wasn't a quick project. It was built in at least 10 to 14 stages over a period of about 300 years. From roughly 900 AD to 1200 AD, generations contributed to its growth, making it a truly communal effort that transcended individual lifetimes. You can almost feel the rhythmic thump of bare feet, the grunts of effort, the dusty air as thousands of people toiled under the ancient sun. Talk about a group project, huh? And imagine trying to get everyone to agree on the design. Monk's Mound served as the central feature of Cahokia, likely functioning as a ceremonial and political hub. At its summit, archaeologists believe there stood a massive wooden structure, perhaps a temple, a chief's residence, or a council house, possibly measuring 100 feet long and 50 feet wide. This structure would have dominated the city, visible for miles around, a potent symbol of power, religion, and the community's connection to the cosmos. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the mound is not simply a random pile of dirt. It's a sophisticated feat of engineering. The builders used different types of soil clays, silts, and sands in specific layers and combinations to ensure stability and drainage, preventing erosion and collapse. They even engineered internal clay liners to prevent water seepage, a testament to their advanced understanding of civil engineering. Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of Monk's Mound was purely ceremonial, or if it also served a defensive purpose, allowing watchmen to spot approaching threats from afar. The construction of Monk's Mound earthly pyramid stands as an incredible achievement, rivaling ancient wonders across the globe. It speaks volumes about the organization, social cohesion, and spiritual beliefs of the Mississippian people. You can almost hear the low, resonant chants accompanying the rhythmic labor, a foundational sound that gently lulls you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've marveled at Monk's Mound, a colossal testament to human endeavor. But Monk's Mound wasn't built in isolation. It was the focal point of an intricately designed metropolis. Imagine walking through the streets of Cahokia, not a chaotic sprawl, but a meticulously organized urban center, a true marvel of ancient city planning and layout. You see, Cahokia at its peak, around 1100 AD, was a masterpiece of urban design. It was a planned city, not one that grew organically and haphazardly over centuries. This means the Mississippian people had a clear vision, a blueprint. For their capital, the entire urban core was oriented around a series of cardinal directions, often aligned with significant astronomical events. This precision in layout is a mainstream historical fact, revealing a sophisticated understanding of surveying and spatial organization that rivals ancient civilizations across the globe. The city was divided into distinct precincts. Surrounding Monk's Mound was a large, flat, central plaza, a vast open space that likely served as a public gathering area for ceremonies. Games like Chunky, a popular Native American sport involving rolling a disc and throwing spears, and markets. Imagine tens of thousands of people gathered in this plaza, the air thick with anticipation, the sounds of celebration echoing off the mounds. From this central plaza, a grid-like pattern of smaller mounds in residential areas radiated outwards. There were at least 120 mounds in total within a 6-square-mile area. Varying in size and purpose, these mounds weren't just random hills. They served specific functions. Some were ceremonial platforms, supporting temples or elite residences. Similar to Monk's Mound, others were burial mounds, containing the remains of important individuals, sometimes with elaborate grave goods. Still others might have marked administrative boundaries or served as navigational aids within the sprawling city. The careful arrangement of these mounds created intentional sightlines and pathways, directing movement and highlighting important areas. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the concept of astronomical alignments woven into Cahokia's layout. Archaeologists have discovered that many of the mounds and key architectural features were aligned to the solstices and equinoxes, suggesting a deep understanding of celestial mechanics and a desire to harmonize their built environment with the cosmos. It implies that their city was not just a place of living, but a physical representation of their cosmological beliefs. Historians still argue whether the astronomical alignments were purely for ceremonial purposes, or if they also served practical functions, such as timing agricultural cycles or annual festivals. So, as you envision the meticulously planned city of Cahokia, its plazas bustling, its mounds standing as silent sentinels, remember the incredible intellectual and organizational power that went into creating such a place? This wasn't just a collection of huts. It was a grand, deliberate urban achievement, a testament to ancient ingenuity that gently lulls you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've imagined the meticulous layout of Cahokia, a city designed with precision and purpose. Now, let's zoom in on one of its most fascinating architectural and astronomical achievements, Woodhenge. Imagine standing within a vast circle of massive timber posts, not merely an arrangement of wood, but a sophisticated ancient solar calendar, silently tracking the celestial dance above. You see, while Monk's Mound anchored the city on the ground, Woodhenge anchored it to the sky. Archaeologists have identified at least 5 concentric circles of large, evenly spaced wooden posts located west of Monk's Mound. In the central plaza, these posts, often made of red cedar, were carefully set into the ground, and their alignments were incredibly precise. This sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics and its application in monumental architecture is a mainstream historical fact, revealing the intellectual depth of Cahokian society. The most famous of these circles, Woodhenge III, had 48 posts and was constructed around 1000 AD. Its primary purpose was to act as a solar calendar. Imagine standing at the center of this circle at dawn on the equinoxes or solstices. You would see the sun rise in perfect alignment with a specific marker post, framed perhaps by the distant summit of Monk's Mound. This allowed the Cahokians to precisely track the changing seasons, crucial for agricultural planning, determining planting and harvesting times, and scheduling important ceremonial events. It was their equivalent of a giant, ancient clock and calendar combined. Forget your smartwatches, these guys had smart forests. The discovery of Woodhenge was a game changer for understanding Cahokian sophistication. It wasn't just about building big mounds, it was about intricate astronomical observation and the integration of cosmic cycles into their daily lives and religious practices. It suggested a priesthood or an elite class that possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, using it to maintain social order and predict important events. This wasn't just practical science, it was deeply intertwined with their spiritual beliefs, linking the earthly realm of their city to the heavens. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the posts of Woodhenge weren't permanent. They were periodically replaced, sometimes every 20-30 years, indicating a continuous effort to maintain and update this vital celestial observatory. This suggests a sustained commitment to astronomical observation and the passing down of this specialized knowledge through generations. Historians still argue whether Woodhenge also served as a viewing platform for other celestial events, like lunar cycles or specific star risings, beyond just the solstices and equinoxes. So, as you envision this ancient Woodhenge ancient solar calendar, its massive posts silhouetted against the rising sun, tracking the precise moments of seasonal change. Remember the incredible intellectual achievements of the Cahokian people? It's a testament to their deep connection to the natural world and the cosmos, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've explored the astronomical brilliance of Woodhenge and the meticulous layout of Cahokia's urban core. Now, let's turn our attention to the people themselves. Imagine yourself walking among the inhabitants of this ancient city, and you quickly realize that not everyone lived or worked the same way. Cahokia was a highly organized society, exhibiting a clear and complex social hierarchy and elite. You see, a city of Cahokia's scale, with its massive public works projects like Monk's Mound and Woodhenge, could not have been built without a powerful, centralized authority. This required a sophisticated social structure, where different groups of people had distinct roles and varying levels of power and prestige. This existence of a clear social hierarchy is a mainstream historical fact, evident in archaeological findings. At the very top of this hierarchy was likely a ruling elite, perhaps a chief or a priestly class, who resided on or near Monk's Mound. Imagine their lives living in grand wooden houses atop the platform mounds, overlooking the entire city, their status clearly communicated by their elevated position. They would have directed the massive labor forces, organized the food distribution, managed trade, and presided over important religious ceremonies. Their attire might have been adorned with exotic materials brought from distant lands, like copper from the Great Lakes or seashells from the Gulf Coast, signifying their wealth and connections. You can almost see them standing tall, issuing commands, their presence commanding respect and awe. Evidence for this elite comes from several sources. High-status burials, often found within special mounds, contain elaborate grave goods. For example, Mound 72, a smaller ridgetop mound in Cahokia, yielded the burial of a prominent male figure placed on a bed of over 20,000 shell beads. Arranged in the shape of a bird, nearby were caches of hundreds of unused arrowheads, mica, and a chunky game set. In some cases, there's also evidence of human sacrifices accompanying these elite burials, suggesting extreme power and ritual significance. Below this ruling class would have been various levels of administrators, craftspeople, and specialized laborers. Then, at the broad base of the social pyramid, were the common farmers and laborers who comprised the vast majority of the population. living in more modest homes scattered throughout the city and its surrounding agricultural areas. A quirky or fringe tidbit concerns the concept of big man societies, where leadership was earned through charisma and achievement rather than inherited status. While Cahokia clearly had a more established, stratified hierarchy, some scholars propose that elements of big man leadership might have existed in its earlier phases, with individuals gaining power through their ability to organize feasts or lead successful hunts, before evolving into a more rigid system. Historians still argue whether Cahokia's social structure was a true chiefdom with hereditary rule, or a more flexible system where religious and political power might have been separate or intertwined in complex ways. So, as you visualize the complex tapestry of Cahokia's society, with its ruling elite directing the grand affairs of the city and its common people toiling in the fields, remember that this was a highly organized and sophisticated civilization. This understanding of their social hierarchy and elite gently lulls you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've gained an understanding of Cahokia's social structure, from its ruling elite to its common laborers. Now, let's delve into the everyday rhythms of life for the vast majority of Cahokians, their daily life. Farming and crafts. Imagine yourself amidst the bustling activity of the city, surrounded by the sounds of planting, grinding, and the creation of essential tools and beautiful objects. For the common people of Cahokia, life revolved largely around agriculture. The fertile lands of the American bottom, fed by the Mississippi River, were their lifeline. The primary crop was maize or corn, which had been gradually domesticated over millennia and arrived in the region around 800 AD. Its introduction was a game changer, allowing for a massive increase in food production and, consequently, population growth. Imagine vast fields of corn stretching away from the city, tended by families and communal work groups. Beyond corn, they also cultivated squash, beans, sunflowers, and various native gourds. This agricultural base is a mainstream historical fact, fundamental to the rise of Cahokia. You'd see men and women working together in the fields, using stone hoes or hoes made from mussel shells to prepare the soil, plant the seeds, and weed the growing crops. The harvest would have been a massive communal effort, followed by the arduous task of processing the maize, drying it, grinding it into flour using stone metates and manos, grinding stones, and storing it in ceramic vessels or underground pits. This stored surplus was crucial for sustaining the large urban population, especially through the colder months. Forget your quick trips to the grocery store. Here, dinner was a full-time job for everyone. Beyond farming, crafts played a vital role in Cahokian daily life and economy. Artisans specialized in various skills, producing goods for both local consumption and trade. You would have seen potters shaping clay into a bewildering array of ceramic vessels, simple cooking pots, elaborate ceremonial jars, and beautiful effigy bottles shaped like animals or human heads. Imagine the rhythmic slap and coil of clay as a potter works. Weavers would have produced textiles from plant fibers, perhaps for clothing, blankets, or mats. Woodworkers would have carved tools, weapons, and intricate ceremonial objects from local timber. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the prevalence of high-quality flint knapping, the art of shaping flint or chert into tools at Cahokia. Archaeologists have found evidence of specialized workshops where skilled craftspeople produced thousands of exquisitely made arrowheads, knives, and other tools, suggesting a highly efficient, almost industrial-scale production for its time. This wasn't just subsistence craft, it was specialized manufacture. Historians still argue whether the level of craft specialization at Cahokia indicates a fully developed market economy, or if goods were primarily exchanged through tribute and reciprocal gift-giving within the social hierarchy. So, as you picture the vibrant daily life of Cahokia, the fields teeming with corn, the air filled with the sounds of grinding and crafting, remember the industriousness and ingenuity of its people. This understanding of their daily life, farming, and crafts paints a vivid picture of a self-sustaining metropolis, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've delved into the daily routines and specialized crafts that sustained Cahokia's vast population. But a city of this size and complexity didn't thrive in isolation. Imagine the pathways radiating out from Cahokia, not just muddy trails, but arteries of commerce and cultural exchange, connecting it to communities hundreds, even thousands of miles away. This reveals the immense reach of Cahokia's trade networks and influence. You see, Cahokia wasn't just a regional center, it was a powerful economic and cultural hub that dominated a vast portion of North America for centuries. Its influence extended far beyond the immediate Mississippi River Valley. This extensive reach is a mainstream historical fact, demonstrating a level of organization and interaction across diverse groups that is truly remarkable for the pre-Columbian era. They were, in essence, the ancient superconnectors of the continent. Archaeological evidence provides a fascinating glimpse into the sheer volume and variety of goods that flowed into and out of Cahokia, from the Great Lakes region to the north. They imported copper, which was meticulously crafted into ceremonial objects, ear spools, and decorative plates. From the Gulf Coast, hundreds of miles to the south, came marine shells, particularly whelk and conch, which were carved into beads, gorgets pendants, and elaborate ceremonial cups. Imagine these precious items making their way upriver, traded hand-to-hand or transported by canoe, a testament to the dedication of ancient merchants. From the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains, they acquired obsidian and chert, valuable materials for tools and weapons. Even closer, from regions like present-day Arkansas, came high-quality flint, which was used for those incredible arrowheads and knives we discussed earlier. And what did Cahokia export in return? Likely finished goods from their specialized workshops, agricultural surplus like dried corn, and perhaps even their distinctive spiritual and political ideologies, which spread through the adoption of Mississippian cultural practices by surrounding groups. It's like they had their own ancient Amazon Prime, only with more paddling and less next-day delivery. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the discovery of salt production sites linked to Cahokia in southern Illinois. Salt, a vital commodity for food preservation and human health, was a major trade item. Cahokians likely controlled access to these brine springs, producing large quantities of salt that could be traded for other valuable goods, further cementing their economic power. Historians still argue whether Cahokia exerted direct political control over these distant trade partners, or if its influence was primarily economic and cultural, a kind of benevolent or perhaps not so benevolent hegemon. So, as you envision the intricate web of ancient trade routes converging on Cahokia, bringing exotic materials and spreading its influence far and wide, remember the dynamic economic life that pulsed through this great city. This understanding of their trade networks and influence paints a picture of a truly central power, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've imagined Cahokia's vast trade networks, illustrating its economic power and reach. Now, let's explore the inner world of the Cahokians, their spiritual beliefs and practices. Imagine stepping into a sacred space, feeling the weight of ancient rituals, and witnessing ceremonies designed to connect the earthly realm with the cosmos. You see, for the Mississippian people, as with many ancient cultures, religion wasn't a separate part of life. It permeated everything. Their spiritual beliefs provided a framework for understanding the universe, their place within it, and the cycles of life, death, and renewal. These beliefs influence their city planning, their art, and their daily activities. This deep integration of spirituality into all aspects of life is a mainstream historical fact common to many pre-industrial societies. At the heart of their cosmology was likely a belief in multiple layers of existence, an upper world associated with celestial beings, birds, and the sun, a middle world where humans lived, and a lower world associated with water, fertility, and certain powerful mythological creatures, many of their symbols, found on pottery, shell carvings, and copper plates, depict imagery from these different cosmic realms. You'd see images of winged human figures, feathered serpents, and composite beings blending human and animal characteristics, all telling stories of their understanding of the universe. So their superheroes weren't just on TV, they were carved into their dinner plates. Ceremonies and rituals would have been central to Cahokian life, likely taking place in the central plaza, on top of the mounds, or within specialized ceremonial structures. These events would have involved communal feasting, music, dancing, and possibly trance states, all aimed at honoring deities, seeking blessings for crops, or commemorating important life passages. The very act of building the mounds could have been a spiritual endeavor, a communal act of connecting the earth with the sky. Imagine the rhythmic drumming echoing across the vast plaza, drawing thousands into a shared spiritual experience. The ruling elite, likely a priestly class or priest chiefs, would have played a crucial role in these spiritual practices, acting as intermediaries between the human and divine worlds. Their elevated position on Monk's Mound likely symbolized their closer connection to the upper world and their authority in matters of faith. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the discovery of numerous chunky stones at Cahokia. While chunky was a popular game, some scholars believe the game itself held deep spiritual significance, symbolizing cosmological battles or cycles of creation and destruction. The polished stone discs, often exquisitely made, might have been used in ritualistic contexts beyond simple sport. Historians still argue whether Cahokian spiritual beliefs represented a unified pantheon, or if different groups within the city held diverse, yet complementary, cosmological views. So, as you envision the vibrant spiritual life of Cahokia, its people deeply connected to their cosmology and the rhythms of the universe, remember the profound role that faith played in shaping their great city. This understanding of their spiritual beliefs and practices illuminates the inner world of the mound builders, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've imagined the spiritual heartbeat of Cahokia, where rituals and ceremonies wove through daily life. Now, let's turn to a more sobering, yet undeniably significant aspect of their practices: human sacrifice and rituals. Imagine the profound, often chilling, power of a society willing to offer human lives for spiritual or political purposes. You see, while the image of human sacrifice might conjure up visions of Aztec or Maya civilizations, archaeological evidence at Cahokia reveals that it was also practiced by the Mississippian people, albeit perhaps with different motivations and contexts. This is a mainstream historical fact, though one that is often less emphasized in public discourse about North American indigenous cultures. It complicates the picture of a peaceful, idyllic society, reminding us that ancient cultures were complex and often brutal. The most compelling evidence comes from Mound 72, a smaller ridgetop mound near Monk's Mound. Here, archaeologists uncovered not just the elaborate burial of a high-status individual, the beaded burial, adorned with thousands of shell beads, but also several mass graves containing hundreds of other human remains. These were not simply individual burials over time, they were deposited simultaneously, suggesting a single, massive sacrificial event. Imagine the scene in one pit: the remains of 53 young women, ranging in age from 15 to 30, seemingly laid out in 2 layers, neatly arranged in another. 39 men and women, seemingly victims of violent execution, with many showing signs of having been clubbed or having their throats slit, in yet another. 4 men whose heads and hands were missing. The evidence suggests these individuals were not sick or elderly, but healthy young adults, deliberately killed as part of a significant ritual. You can almost feel the somber weight of these discoveries, the chilling echoes of ancient screams. Not exactly a typical Tuesday afternoon. Is it more like a very, very bad Monday? The reasons for these sacrifices are still debated, but they likely tied into ritual significance linked to power, fertility, or the consecration of new constructions like mounds or elite residences. The sacrifice of numerous individuals might have been seen as a way to empower a new leader, to ensure the success of crops, or to pay a profound debt to the cosmos. The association of these sacrifices with elite burials suggests they might have been part of a leader's funerary rites, intended to accompany them into the afterlife or bolster their spiritual power. A quirky or fringe tidbit concerns the Birdman tablet found at Cahokia, depicting a human figure with bird-like features, often interpreted as a shaman or a significant spiritual entity. Some theories suggest that certain sacrifices, particularly of those missing heads and hands, might have been linked to specific Birdman rituals or a deeper cosmological narrative involving transformation or regeneration. Historians still argue whether the sacrifices at Cahokia were primarily voluntary ritual suicide or devotion, or involuntary capture and execution, given the lack of specific historical accounts from the time. So, as you contemplate the unsettling, yet powerful, evidence of human sacrifice and rituals at Cahokia, remember that these practices, though disturbing to modern sensibilities, were deeply integrated into their spiritual and social fabric. It's a reminder of the complex and sometimes stark realities of ancient civilizations, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've just peered into the profound and unsettling rituals of Cahokia, including human sacrifice. Now, let's consider the forces that could have challenged even such a powerful and organized society, the environment. Imagine the delicate balance of a thriving city relying heavily on its natural surroundings, and how even subtle shifts could begin to fray the edges of its existence. This brings us to the crucial role of environmental challenges and change in Cahokia's story. You see, for all their ingenuity in city planning and agriculture, the Cahokians were ultimately dependent on the natural world, and that world was not static. One of the most significant factors was climate change, while not on the scale of modern global warming. The medieval warm period, roughly 950–1250 AD, provided ideal conditions for maize agriculture in the American bottom. However, after this period, the climate began to shift. Cooler temperatures and periods of increased rainfall or drought would have directly impacted crop yields. Imagine an entire city, reliant on predictable harvests, suddenly facing seasons of unpredictable weather. A couple of bad harvests in a row could lead to widespread food shortages, even famine, impacting a dense urban population. This climate fluctuation, affecting agricultural societies globally, is a mainstream historical fact. Beyond broad climate shifts, the very act of building and sustaining Cahokia had a profound impact on its local environment. Consider the sheer amount of timber needed. The construction of hundreds of mounds, requiring tons of earth to be moved, would have necessitated vast quantities of wood for tools, scaffolding, and retaining structures. Building thousands of homes for tens of thousands of people. Cooking fires and ceremonial bonfires would have rapidly depleted local forests. This deforestation would have led to increased soil erosion, especially in a floodplain environment, potentially silting up rivers and reducing the fertility of agricultural lands. It's like building a giant city, only to discover you've used up all the lumber in your backyard. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Cahokians might have even practiced a form of proto-urban planning in managing their resources. Some archaeological evidence suggests they tried to replant trees or manage forest plots around the city. Recognizing the importance of sustainable timber supplies, however, the scale of their resource consumption might have simply outstripped any such efforts. Historians still argue whether Cahokia's abandonment was primarily due to acute environmental degradation caused by the inhabitants themselves, or if broader regional climate shifts played a more significant, unavoidable role. So, As you envision the once fertile fields around Cahokia facing the stresses of changing climate and resource depletion, remember that even the greatest civilizations are vulnerable to their environment. This understanding of environmental challenges and change paints a more nuanced picture of their eventual decline, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've considered the environmental pressures that began to weigh on Cahokia. Now, let's explore another silent, yet powerful, force that can devastate even the most thriving urban center's disease and demographic shifts. Imagine a bustling city, its population dense and interconnected, suddenly facing an invisible enemy that spreads silently through its streets, leaving sickness and death in its wake. You see, while archaeologists don't have written records detailing epidemics in Cahokia, the very nature of urban living creates conditions ripe for the rapid spread of infectious diseases. A large, concentrated population, living in close proximity, with rudimentary sanitation compared to modern standards, is a perfect breeding ground for pathogens. Think of the narrow pathways, the communal living, the shared water sources, all potential vectors for illness. This vulnerability of dense populations to infectious disease outbreaks is a mainstream historical fact. Observed in urban centers across the globe throughout history, the introduction of new agricultural practices, like the intensive cultivation of maize, while providing abundant food, could also have brought unforeseen health consequences. A diet heavily reliant on a single crop, even if plentiful, might lead to nutritional deficiencies, making the population more susceptible to illness. Also, the expansion of agricultural fields could have brought people into closer contact with new disease vectors from disturbed ecosystems. Archaeological evidence from human remains found at Cahokia's burial sites sometimes offers clues. While it's difficult to identify specific diseases from skeletal remains alone. Signs of stress, such as enamel hypoplasias, lines on teeth, indicating periods of arrested growth due to severe illness or malnutrition during childhood, are common. Increases in skeletal lesions indicative of infectious diseases can suggest periods of widespread illness. A significant drop in birth rates or an increase in infant mortality rates, which can be inferred from population demographics and burial grounds, would also point towards widespread health crises. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the idea that the very communal nature of Mississippian life, with large public gatherings in the central plaza and on the mounds, while vital for social cohesion and spiritual practice, could have inadvertently acted as superspreader events during an epidemic. A major ceremony, bringing thousands together, could have turned a localized outbreak into a city-wide catastrophe in a matter of days. Historians still argue whether specific, devastating epidemics, rather than chronic low-level illnesses, played a significant role in Cahokia's demographic decline. Given the lack of specific microbial evidence, so, as you consider the silent threat of disease and demographic shifts hanging over Cahokia, remember that even the most impressive civilizations are not immune to the unseen forces of nature. It's a sobering thought, highlighting the fragility of even powerful urban centers, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've considered the environmental and health challenges that could have beset Cahokia. Now, let's explore another significant factor that often shapes the rise and fall of civilizations, warfare, and fortifications. Imagine the once open city, feeling the growing unease, and then seeing massive defensive structures rise, a clear sign that peace was no longer guaranteed. You see, for much of its early history, Cahokia appears to have been an open, unfortified city. This suggests a period of relative peace and perhaps a dominant influence that didn't face significant external threats. However, this changed dramatically around 1200 AD. At this point, the core of Cahokia, including Monk's Mound and the Grand Plaza, was enclosed by a massive defensive stockade. This shift from an open city to a fortified one is a mainstream historical fact, indicating a significant change in the political and social landscape. Imagine this formidable barrier, a wall of large, upright logs, each perhaps 15 to 20 feet tall, deeply set into the ground. It was likely built in stages, encompassing approximately 200 acres and stretching for about 2 miles. This wasn't just a simple fence, it was a serious defensive structure, complete with regular bastions tower-like projections that allowed defenders to fire arrows or hurl stones along the wall, preventing attackers from reaching its base. To build it, an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 logs were needed, each requiring significant effort to fell, transport, and erect. That's a lot of tree chopping for a city that was already struggling with deforestation. Suddenly, the neighbors weren't so friendly anymore, were they? The construction of the stockade strongly suggests an increase in intergroup conflict and the need for defense against external enemies. Who were these enemies? Possibly rival chiefdoms emerging in the region, perhaps smaller communities pushed to the brink by resource scarcity or shifting trade dynamics, or it could have been internal strife. Though a stockade typically implies an external threat, the very act of building such a massive fortification points to a palpable sense of danger and a society mobilizing significant resources for protection. Archaeological evidence supports the idea of increasing conflict. Besides the stockade itself, skeletal remains from later periods at Cahokia show a higher incidence of trauma, including fractured skulls and embedded arrowheads, suggesting more frequent and intense violent encounters. This physical evidence complements the story told by the fortifications. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Cahokian stockade was apparently rebuilt multiple times, perhaps as many as 4 times over a period of about 150 years. This constant repair and reconstruction effort indicates a sustained threat and a long-term commitment to defense, suggesting that the initial problem was never fully resolved. Historians still argue whether the increased warfare was a cause or a symptom of Cahokia's decline, or if it was simply a natural part of the Mississippian cultural landscape, albeit amplified in this later period. So, as you envision the formidable stockade rising around Cahokia, a stark symbol of growing unease and conflict, remember that even the most powerful cities must sometimes turn their efforts from building upwards to building defensively. This understanding of warfare and fortifications adds another layer to the complex story of Cahokia's eventual fate, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've considered the environmental and social pressures that mounted on Cahokia, from climate shifts to the necessity of defensive walls. These challenges, accumulating over centuries, eventually led to the profound mystery at the heart of Cahokia's story, the city's mysterious decline. Imagine a once thriving metropolis, slowly, subtly, losing its vibrancy, its people gradually departing until its impressive mound stood silent, reclaiming the landscape. You see, Cahokia wasn't sacked by invaders or destroyed by a single catastrophic event, like a massive earthquake or a sudden plague. Instead, its decline was a gradual process, likely spanning several generations, perhaps a century or more, beginning around 1200 AD and accelerating until the site was largely abandoned by 1400 AD. This slow, enigmatic depopulation, rather than a dramatic collapse, is a mainstream historical fact that makes understanding Cahokia's end particularly challenging for archaeologists. It's like watching a candle slowly flicker out, rather than being snuffed out in a gust of wind. Multiple theories attempt to explain this abandonment, and it's highly probable that a combination of factors, rather than a single cause, was responsible. The environmental pressures we discussed played a significant role. Overhunting of local game, deforestation for timber and fuel, and soil depletion from intensive maize farming could have reduced the carrying capacity of the immediate area if the land couldn't sustain such a massive population. People would have begun to disperse. It's hard to throw a block party when there's no wood for the fire and no deer for the barbecue. Climate change, particularly the shift towards cooler temperatures and potentially less predictable rainfall after the medieval warm period, could have led to repeated crop failures. A population as large and dense as Cahokia's would be extremely vulnerable to food shortages. If the ruling elite couldn't reliably feed their people, their authority would wane, leading to social unrest or a gradual exodus. The increased warfare and the need for expensive fortifications also drained resources and likely created a less secure, more dangerous environment. People might have simply sought safer, less volatile places to live, even if it meant leaving behind their grand city. The constant threat of attack, combined with the other stresses, could have made urban life simply unsustainable or undesirable. A quirky or fringe tidbit is the theory that the very religious and social structures that allowed Cahokia to flourish eventually became too rigid or demanding. Perhaps the burden of supporting the elite, or the demands of massive public works, became too great for the common people, leading to internal dissent or a quiet refusal to participate. Slowly eroding the city's cohesion, historians still argue whether internal political instability or external migration pressures were the primary drivers of Cahokia's abandonment, or if a slow, unforced dispersal was the dominant pattern. So, as you contemplate the vast, silent mounds of Cahokia, imagining the slow fading of its once vibrant life, remember that the city's mysterious decline was a complex interplay of environmental, social, and perhaps even spiritual factors. It's a testament to the fragile balance that sustains all civilizations, gently lulling you deeper into a calm, dream-filled slumber. You've imagined the gradual decline of Cahokia, a once great city slowly fading into the landscape. But even in its abandonment, Cahokia left an indelible mark. Its story is one of profound legacy and modern rediscovery, a powerful reminder that history often hides in plain sight, waiting to be understood and appreciated. You see, for centuries after its abandonment, Cahokia's mounds remained. They were simply features of the landscape, overgrown with trees, often mistaken for natural hills by European settlers. The very name Monk's Mound comes from a group of Trappist monks who settled near the largest mound in the early 1800s. Cultivating its terraces without fully understanding its true origin or significance. This misunderstanding and subsequent slow recognition of Cahokia's true nature is a mainstream historical fact, highlighting how easily monumental achievements can be overlooked. The rediscovery of Cahokia as a significant archaeological site began in the mid-19th century, but it wasn't until the 20th century, particularly with systematic archaeological excavations starting in the 1960s, that its true scale and importance became widely understood. Imagine the excitement of archaeologists slowly uncovering the evidence: the vast plaza, the precise alignments of Woodhenge, the incredible artifacts, and the sheer number of mounds. It was like piecing together the fragments of a giant, forgotten puzzle. This scientific revelation transformed our understanding of pre-Columbian North America, proving that highly complex. Urban societies existed north of Mexico. Cahokia's legacy today is immense. It stands as a powerful testament to the ingenuity, organizational skills, and spiritual depth of the Mississippian people and, more broadly, the indigenous cultures of North America. It challenges simplistic narratives that portray these cultures as purely nomadic or primitive, instead revealing them as sophisticated city builders and astronomers. Its existence reshapes our understanding of the continent's past, revealing a vibrant and complex history that was largely erased from popular consciousness. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that while Cahokia was largely abandoned, some of its cultural practices and possibly even descendants of its people migrated to other regions, influencing later Mississippian cultures that continued to thrive in the Southeast. So, the city itself faded, but its knowledge and traditions may have lived on in new forms elsewhere. Historians still argue whether the inhabitants of Cahokia dispersed primarily into specific descendant groups, or if their migration led to a broader cultural diffusion across the region. Today, Cahokia Mound State. Historic Site is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a recognition of its global significance. It's a place where you can walk among these ancient earthworks, climb Monk's Mound, and gaze out over the land that once supported a thriving metropolis. It's a silent reminder of a powerful past, waiting for you to discover its stories. As the sun sets on our journey to Cahokia, casting a gentle glow over the ancient mounds, allow yourself to feel the vastness of human achievement and the quiet stories held within the earth. Your mind is calm, your body relaxed. There's nothing left to do now but to breathe, to simply be, and to let the peacefulness of this moment embrace you fully. Each breath in, a gentle sigh of contentment. Each breath out, a release of any lingering thought. The lost city of Cahokia and its mound builders have been unveiled, and now it's time for you to drift into a deep, restorative sleep. Sweet dreams.